Now, hopefully you'll agree that today is looking like a rather good day. We've got two Ford Focus RSs, we've got somewhere in the region of 650 horsepower. We have one very simple question to answer, namely, which one is the most fun? I'm dressed for the occasion in my favourite trainers and my favourite hoodie, so let's get driving. Mk3, brand new Focus RS. Some statistics for you in case you've been under a rock the past few months. The Ford Focus RS is 30 grand-ish. It's 350 horsepower, 347 pound-foot on overboost. It is sub 5 to 60, it's 165 miles an hour flat out. With me in the car, it is claimed to be a 1600 kilogram car, which we will come back to. But what I really like, there's just this overarching sense of just like fun and boisterousness. It wants you to go as quickly as you can, wherever you can, and you get that through everything. You've got really quick, really responsive steering that gives you a great sense of agility in the car. You only need a tiny little bit of lock there, so just to point you through, and then you're off on the run for the next corner. A sense of aggression and boisterousness extends to this powertrain as well. This engine and gearbox is really good for just sort of goading you on, exhaust noise and all. You know, the throw's really tight and nicely weighted, so you're always encouraged to, you know, just blip that and go again. The engine, they've, you know, Ford have made a big deal of the changes made to this, and it is revvy and it is keen, you know. Doesn't perhaps sing its way to the top of the rev range, but in the middle and with little throttle blips and things. I think key as well to this, in terms of the attitude of the car, is the amount of grip and composure you've got from this chassis. A lot's been said about the Supersport Michelin tyres, and they're really good for just purchase on the road, and the dampers in this. The standard mode is quite tough around town, and again, it's that sense of, come on, you know, set me free, let me go. And you get some speed underneath it and some bumps, and the way it just handles things is really, really nice. And again, it's just encouraging you to go, push harder, push harder. It's a blunt one, but it's still really, really fast as well. I know people will look at the 0 to 62 time goal, you know, mega quick, but even once you're up and running, that throttle response, the noise, and, you know, outright performance certainly give you a great sense of speed. Be interesting to see how it compares to the older car. Obviously that's less power but less weight as well, but what is not so good about the new Ford Focus RS, believe it or not, there are a few little problems. Chief among them at the moment is this blooming seat, which is a pain. It's so high, you feel like you're playing the piano the way your feet go down on the pedals, and it's really, really irritating. And it's frustrating as well because you've got really nicely placed pedals, you've got really nice control weights, and it just really, really undermines that. If I'm honest, I have a slight issue with the drive modes, to be honest with you. So you've got 4 modes, you've got normal, sport, track and drift. Obviously you've got drift. You find yourself sticking in one mode. We're in normal at the moment, which is fine, suits every situation really. I tend to keep it in sport just because I'm a bit of a child and I like the fact that you get more noise. But other than that, you don't use the more aggressive suspension mode because that is really, really tough. You're not going to use drift mode on the road, I don't think. Although it's not actually a bad road setting, you're either defeating the object by using drift mode to drive along, not drift, aren't you? So you can use them, but I still think that one general setup may have just suited a bit better. It's a 4-wheel drive system, and having those tyres, you don't feel like you're pushing the limits of grip that much on the road. I suspect when it inevitably rains, this will feel brilliant, and I will look foolish and have to retract all my statements, but at the moment, I don't know, there are points where it feels brilliant and you've got all this agility and balance and grip, and then you just sort of think, I wish I could have a little bit more going on. You've seen these heroic shots of Focus RS's massively sideways or powering out, you know, driving the rear wheels, but actually that doesn't happen as regularly as you would like. Now, I hope it doesn't sound like I'm on a big down on the Focus RS, because I'm not. Hopefully you've seen through the driving that I'm very keen on it, but in the company of that Mk2, I don't think it looks all that amazing. I think it's a less menacing car to look at, I would say. It's 5-door, it's not got that big wide-shouldered look. Everything's just a bit more tame, which you don't normally associate with Focus RSs, but you put the two of them together, this one is the more unassuming in terms of just body shape and things, which is interesting. I think what's key to remember though with this car, assessing it, especially compared to the old one, is this is now a global product. This is one Ford, this is a Focus RS for America to Australia, and it's got to cater therefore for a lot more taste. It can't just be as hardcore as we perhaps like our hot hatches, you know, but it will be fascinating to see just where we've come from. So I think it's probably time we swap cars. So here we are then, the older car, the Mk2 Focus RS, a car that, well, it was first seen at a motor show in 2008, which is 8 years ago now, 8 years ago. And to give you some sense of how long ago that is, the Golf Club Sport S that came out a couple of months ago has the Nürburgring front-wheel drive record, has 5 horsepower more than this, and it's, you know, so it's 7 years old. It came out in 2009. You know, it had so much power back then. 305 horsepower was an unheard of number for front-wheel drive. You know, and people said, why on earth is it not four-wheel drive? You can't put that amount of power through the front wheels. And interestingly, back then, Ford was saying that four-wheel drive would add too much weight and complexity to the package. And so now we have a four-wheel drive car, we have a four-wheel drive Focus RS, and it's 140 kilos heavier than this car. And when this car came out, people went, oh, that's a bit heavy for a hot hatch. It's 1470 kilos, and a new car's 1600, so sorry, 130 kilos. And is it interesting how attitudes and times changed, that back then being under 1500 kilos was heavy, and now that's probably there or thereabouts for a car. Now Ford's answer to those people who said you can't put that much power through the front wheels was very clever Quaife limited slip differential on the front and the Revo knuckle. Don't expect me to explain Revo knuckle, I wish that I could. Essentially, you can see there, that's a lot of throttle, first and second gear, no hint of torque steer or, you know, being unsettled. It does get that occasionally, but the engineering did work. You could have 300 horsepower through the 2 front wheels. So immediately getting into this and comparing it to the newer car, 2 things stand out immediately. And the first is that engine. Much has been said about it, much will continue to be said about it, but 5 cylinders are cool. 5 cylinders are better than 4, and 5 authentic cylinders are better than 4 artificial ones. It's not as loud and as over the top as the new car, but it's authentic. You know, it's real. That's a real 5-cylinder noise. And yeah, it does sound a bit like an Audi Quattro, and that's very cool. And more than that, it's just a great engine. It's got a bit more inertia to it to the new engine. It's not quite as willing to sort of get up and go and probably rev out, but it's lovely. It's got a really strong mid-range. You've got to bear in mind, it had 324 pound-foot of torque, which is the same as the current car without its overboost. So you've got these big, you know, this big slug of mid-range torque. So third gear, 3,000 RPM, and you just fly, just absolutely saunters along. It's fantastic. I don't think this gives away much, if anything, in terms of performance to the new car. And it makes you think actually how far the new car has taken it on in terms of performance. What's actually fascinating as well, just how different it feels in terms of simplicity. I mean, there is nothing, relatively speaking, here. There are no buttons on the steering wheel. This infotainment system is much simpler, but key as well, there's no drive mode. You turn it on and you go. You turn the ESP off if you want to. We don't want to right now, thank you. And that's it. That's the setup you have. And I think I prefer that, because it just means the engineers have spent all their time perfecting one setup, perfecting one set of springs and dampers and roll bars. And yeah, it is a bit tough around town, but you take that compromise. So like the new car, this Focus RS has a 6-speed manual as well. It's lighter in action than that car. It feels a bit more delicate, not quite as perhaps receptive to you just throwing it about as aggressively as you can as in the new one. It feels like it's quick and it's slick, but you don't feel like you can take as many liberties with it. We need to talk about handling, don't we? What's immediately apparent in this car is you have got more going on, you know, primarily because it's front-wheel drive. So though the Revo knuckle does work really well and that diff is mega effective, you've got to think more about your throttle applications out of corners. Right, however, before this becomes just an aren't old cars brilliant diatribe and new cars are rubbish, blah, 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 because that's not true, should address what the new car does better than this one. While, you know, in a straight line, they're probably quite evenly matched, I have no doubt at all that the new car would be quicker down a road, just in terms of the amount of grip it's got, the confidence that you get through the controls and through the knowledge of having that four-wheel drive there. I'm certain that that would be quicker. The limits are just a bit lower in this compared to the new one. There's certainly nowhere near as much confidence in the stopping power. It's also interesting to see actually how far we've come in terms of sort of body stiffness and things. You know, this car, you can feel it sometimes over bumps. It gets itself a bit more unsettled than the new Focus RS will do, because, you know, that's just so composed and you can throw everything at it and it'll deal with it. This, you can just feel it sort of, maybe flex is too harsh a term, but it just, you're a bit more considered with what you do and how you approach it, and you'll still have a lot of fun. 2009 really isn't that long ago, but there are noticeable areas where the new Focus RS has moved the game on from this one. You want outright speed, you want to get a Focus RS, and you're going to go very, very swiftly indeed. Alright, confession time. I spent so long thrashing around in both of these that by the time it came to conclusion, it was actually dark. And that's no good, is it? Sorry. Which Focus RS was more fun? Honestly, I think it's the new car, just. It's a bit more over the top, and the way it can attack a road just so fast is incredible. Given the choice between them, however, I'd take the old car. Ultimately, it is less capable, but I like that you have more going on more of the time. And it looks better, doesn't it? So the Mk3 RS will put a smile on your face more easily, but I think the satisfaction from driving a Mk2 may well last a bit longer. Sound fair?